This is my palette journey. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I also wanted to do a video here during eyeshadow palette month where I talked about my palette journey. I've been doing an entire month dedicated to nothing but eyeshadow palettes, and I just wanted to do a video where I unpack a little bit how that came to be, because the collection I have and the passion I have for eyeshadow palettes didn't just like happen overnight. It wasn't like I woke up and all of a sudden I was making content about eyeshadow palettes, right? This is a long time coming, and it's something that I grew into as my makeup collection changed over time as well. So therefore I just want to give you this sort of like the little bit of background about me as a makeup user, where things come from, and sort of how my palette journey has gone. Of course, we all need to start somewhere, and I'll insert some pictures here and there of like where my palette collection used to be, etc. Because I didn't start, of course, with the palette collection I have today. You'll see my entire eyeshadow palette collection on Sunday, I think. Sometime, like one of the last videos I'll do this month is going to be my eyeshadow palette collection video. So if you're a nosy person, then stay tuned. But yeah, I just really enjoy eyeshadow palettes, and it was something that when I first started using makeup, palettes like we have today weren't really a thing. So when I first got into makeup, it was more like singles or trios or maybe a duo. I think the biggest palettes we had really were those like 5-pan like quintets that Dior does and stuff. That was like the biggest thing you could really find. So when I first started off, I had a lot of NYX singles that I ended up depotting after a while because I had so many, and I stuck them into Z palettes because I just had so many like single shades. So for me, like having a cohesive color story that goes together and that gives you the options of creating different looks really was a game changer. And I think that really the online beauty community has been a driving force in the popularity of eyeshadow palettes as well. Of course, we need to mention the Urban Decay Naked palette here. That wasn't the first eyeshadow palette I owned, nor was it the first eyeshadow palette that became popular, but as far as makeup lore goes, the impact that the Urban Decay Naked palette had on the industry and on like, you know, beauty YouTube and stuff, it was huge. It was absolutely humongous. There was like a naked palette being sold like every second or something crazy like that. It was very popular. I do remember though that at the time I did already own some Too Faced palettes, I believe. I had some Sleek bits. So it was already like making the rounds, going around, having these things for sure. I still have a little Sleek palette that I have in my makeup memory box that was sort of like my Urban Decay Naked palette before I ever owned an Urban Decay Naked palette. So I definitely started more with the more affordable things because palettes were expensive, you know, and especially when I first got into makeup, I really didn't feel like spending that much money on my makeup. I was only just getting started. I really had to figure out how to make things work for myself. And it, you know, buying an entire palette would have just been a very, very expensive mistake to make. And that is definitely something that went into it. I had this like just drive to try all of these things, and especially like around the time that I bought my first makeup palettes was also when I started blogging. And I definitely think that that's the driving force. If I didn't do this online thing, I don't think I'd have the eyeshadow palette collection I have now, and that it would have gone through a different journey. I would have just had like maybe 1 or 2 palettes. I wouldn't have gone crazy and like collected every single Urban Decay palette I could get my hands on. I did a video about my Urban Decay palette collection as well if you want to see that. So if you want to get nostalgic, there's lots of videos as well. But yeah, I think I mainly just had some quads and like drugstore things with a single here and there. I definitely started collecting MAC singles really early on. I remember building my own eyeshadow palette with MAC singles very early on in my makeup journey. And I just really enjoyed having those shades in, like, you know, your Wood Winged and your Patina and Satin Taupe. Those were three of my favorite shades. And I still have those, and they're still fine to use. So I really, really enjoyed those. But then came palettes, and then Urban Decay, you know, Too Faced, the fun packaging that they did. Like with Too Faced, like a lot of their early palettes looked a bit like a boudoir kind of situation. And then Urban Decay did like really outlandish packaging as well, with like mirrors and bejeweled, and there were just so many options. And I definitely feel that when eyeshadow palette first started happening, what a brand like Urban Decay, for instance, started off doing, because I have their deluxe shadow box still, and what it just was a couple of their singles combined in a palette. So the idea of an eyeshadow palette as its own standalone product didn't exist for a very long time. I really feel that with the Naked palettes and ABH Modern Renaissance, I mean, the chokehold that had on the online beauty community is, of course, Noiricorn as well, that those were really events that brought us the eyeshadow palettes we have today. So the way how it went for me is really, at first it was just Urban Decay that I was collecting, and then everybody was raving about Too Faced, but it was hard to get, so I remember watching videos on YouTube to try and decide, because I was traveling to the US, like which one am I gonna get of the chocolate bar palettes, and then I ended up having all the chocolate bar palettes at some point. Same with ABH, like I had every single ABH palette that was out there at a certain point in time. But I just felt like that collector's mindset wasn't something that was bringing me much, and I was sort of not really venturing out of like my own like little safe space. So I remember in 2018, I gave myself the task to play around more with color. Up until that point, I didn't wear colorful eyeshadow. I just wore neutrals every single day. I wore a neutral eye with a red lip. That was my look for like 5 years, maybe longer. And you could like just, if you thought of me, it was a neutral eye with a red lip. That was me to a T. And then in 2018, something just clicked. I wanted to be more creative with my makeup. I wanted to play around with techniques. So I started playing with like different eyeshadow shapes and like different application methods, different brushes, what works for me. And that journey is also documented here on the channel and on my blog for sure, because that was all there as well, because I was very often like doing those looks for videos. And then as I was playing around with color and I started to learn like what colors look good on me and how to apply them and how that all works, and like playing around with all these eyeshadow techniques, I had a lot of fun. But I slowly but surely really started to like come closer to what works best for me, and therefore I became more focused on the products themselves. So not so much the techniques, like I know what techniques work best for me and how I get the most out of like the real estate around my eyes, you could say. And now I'm just like really focused on reviewing those things and seeing how they work for me. I have hooded deep set eyes. There's a lot that's possible, but there are also limitations there, and I'm very prone to creasing, and over time I've just developed techniques and ways for me to make almost any eyeshadow work, and I've really enjoyed that as well. So that was a learning curve. So I think that at first I just like stayed in a safe space. I was collecting things that I thought were fun, but I wasn't really exploring too much outside of that. So I had all of these really fun, bright, colorful things, but I wasn't really using them. I wasn't really doing much with them, which I thought was a shame. Like, you have it, you need to use it as well. So that's, you know, that's been my spiel here on the channel for a while. And now you know where that came from, because I fell into that trap myself where I was buying things, but I wasn't necessarily using them, which was a bit of a shame. And then, of course, 2020 came around, COVID happened, and that's when I became, like, I just had more time on my hands to be creating videos, and so I started to take this channel a little bit more seriously, and I think that's when I decided to post 4 times a week, and I started my second channel, and I made this channel all about makeup, and the other channel for all of the other things. So there was that as well, and that's when things really started to roll on here. And the only reason why I now have so many eyeshadow palettes is also because they are sent to me or they're part of PR gifts, and I just feel incredibly lucky that that's the case, because I already mentioned at the start of the video, like, eyeshadow palettes are expensive, and a lot of the indie brands that I try as well, those are expensive items. They aren't like something you just buy willy-nilly off the shelf. And I have gone through all of the paces. Like, I'm really happy with a retailer like MONOLITH now. It makes it so much easier for me to be shopping. I don't think I've ordered a single eyeshadow palette from like an indie brand that's not in the EU in like ever since I discovered them a couple of years ago. Like, everything goes through them, and I just find it super easy. Because when you do order something from a different brand that's in the US, you're gonna always be hit with extra, you know, shipping and taxes and stuff. So I've been through that. I've taken those fees and I've taken those hits, and I've always like had to wonder, like, is it worth it? If I buy it now, it's gonna take like 2 months to get here. So I also knew, like, content-wise, that I was never gonna be the influencer that people look for to get like the first review of a product or anything like that. I just wasn't gonna be that person. So I knew that very early on, and therefore for me, I'm much more about, okay, can I try every single shade in the palette? What is the quality like? Does it stay on my hooded deep set eyes? And as I started like building that more into my content, like eyeshadow palette reviews, even though eyeshadow palettes themselves haven't been that like popular within like makeup in general. Like, there was like a heyday of like the eyeshadow palette for a while there. I think 2018 was like the sweet spot almost. Like 2016 to 2018 was when eyeshadow palettes really, really thrived. And now it's more like a niche subject within makeup, I feel. But it's a niche that suits me really well. Not because I'm the most creative makeup user of like doing all these amazing eye looks and stuff, but because it is a niche that I've been exploring for a very long time. So I've tried thousands of eyeshadow palettes at this point. So I've tried a lot. I have a lot of comparison. I can take a lot of notes on things. And I have everything cataloged on my blog as well of what I tried. So I can always go back to things like, how did I feel about this? Or how did I think about that? Or I have a video about that. So there's a lot of like lore there. And like I said, eyeshadow palettes themselves aren't that popular. But still, till this day, some of my, some of the videos that I do here on the channel that are the most popular are the ones where I talk about eyeshadow palettes. It's not the only reason why I keep doing eyeshadow palette month. I have been doing eyeshadow palette month even before I made it a YouTube thing. It started on my blog, actually. I started blogging, and then I was like, I would always have a backlog of eyeshadow palettes that I had bought, that I was trying out, but then I hadn't posted the review yet. So that's sort of how it came to be. Like, I was just posting all of my reviews in August just to catch up and to have something to do. But I really enjoy talking about eyeshadow palettes. I enjoy trying them out. It is hands down my favorite eyeshadow, like, makeup product to begin with. And so I just, you know, made it a thing on YouTube as well. And it's always like my favorite thing to do. And every year I start preparing for this. Like, at the start of the year, I have my little notebook and I take notes on what videos to do. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure I can like make it work. But very often I have enough ideas to fill in an entire month with daily videos. So where some creators do like daily posts in December for like Vlogmas and stuff, this is my version of Vlogmas. I have summer vacation, so I have a bit more time on my hands to film and edit videos. So that's really where it came from. So, and that's sort of how my palette journey went. I sort of started with the small things, and then slowly but surely it built up to what it is now. So if you want to see what it is currently, what the state is of my eyeshadow palette collection, then you can watch the video that is going to go live in a couple of days. And then I really hope you enjoyed watching this video today. We still have a little bit of time left in Eyeshadow Palette Month, just a teensy tiny bit though. It's almost over, we're almost at 31st of August, so I hope you enjoyed and had a great time joining me for all these videos. I certainly had a lot of fun filming them for you, so thanks so much for being here. Thumbs up the video if you liked it, and I'll see you again tomorrow for a new video. Bye-bye!